Hey everybody, welcome to the Rotowire Fantasy Football Podcast. Today is Wednesday, December 8th. As always, we are brought to you by WynnBET. Thanks to WynnBET for their exclusive sponsorship, gaming sponsorship all season long. My guest today is my good friend Andy Behrens. So this is going to be a conversation with a friend. Looking forward to this. You might have seen Yahoo's Andy Behrens before. Every once in a while, he's a little slightly popular in our industry. Andy, what's going on? How are you?
It is a pleasure to see you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, things are good. Things are
Yeah.
good. I was just updating. Man, we've had a busy day. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on today.
Yeah.
Wednesdays are always full of news updates and nonsense like that. People think it's glamorous and it's fun to work in the fantasy industry, and then you spend the better part of an hour, getting Mark Ingram out of your lineups and getting Alex Collins into your ranks, and it's a slog. I,
Yeah.
I gotta say.
The good news is we get Alvin Kamara back into our ranks too, and that at least it looks like we did. He after a full practice from him today, and of course Mark Ingram going on the COVID. Let's start right there. Big transition right there.
Yeah, Ingram out, and it was one of those things for me today where I had to remember which of the 26 leagues I'm in actually had Mark Ingram in lineups, and it turned out to be a disturbing number of them. But Kamara's return is super exciting. Obviously, he's got the Jets. It's a team that's allowed the most rushing scores so far this year. I don't need to convince people that the Jets are a pretty good matchup, and it's Alvin Kamara without Mark Ingram in the way. So
Right.
that's particularly exciting. We get like another look at what exactly it looks like when Taysom Hill is on the field with Alvin Kamara, which was not always great last year. Although Kamara was playing through injury for part of that stretch of games that Taysom was the starter. So we'll see. They finished on a strong note. They started on kind of a lousy note last year. So hopefully we get full regular usage Alvin Kamara, whether that's the 2021 version where he carries 20 times a game, or whether it's last year's version where he carries 12 times and catches 8 passes. Either one is fine with me.
Exactly, and you know that they don't have Michael Thomas. They don't have Mark Ingram. They don't have Kenny Stills. They don't have Kenny Stills. Andy, come on, that just changes the ranks too. You buried the lead. I hate it when you do that, but it's a different Saints offense, and for that matter, we don't know how much Hill's going to throw. He's got the mallet finger issue, and we'll see how much that affects him. So, but and he might not have his offensive lineman. That's the other thing that's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
We saw last week against Dallas what a big problem that was.
Yeah, a compromised version of Taysom Hill is so difficult to rank, right?
Mhm.
Because he can, he's not the best passer under normal circumstances when he's fully operational, and now he's got a damaged finger on his throwing hand. That's a problem. He's got a foot issue. That's another problem. So we're dealing with, I don't know, some percentage of a normal Taysom Hill, and of course he's also inclined to run at the whiff of trouble. So but it's real. I mean, the guy's coming off. He had all these issues last week, and he rushed for 101 yards. Right? It was
Right.
the perfect example of how fantasy scoring is broken at the quarterback position. Like, nobody should be able to throw 4 interceptions and have just an objectively poor game and still score 27 fantasy points or whatever it was. But he does. Like, that's probably your scoring system. It's definitely our scoring system outside of Fishbowl.
I was just going to say
That's
Scott Fishbowl on line 4 there.
Yeah,
But
exactly. But that's it. Unless you're in some sort of format that just punishes giveaways, which we probably should, or you're in a format that accounts for accuracy, and we should probably do that too. Like, I think Scott's scoring is reasonable. It's probably close to what it ought to be. But nobody's in a system like that. Like, nobody plays with those settings, so Taysom Hill's going to be great.
yeah, that's the one thing I love Fishbowl, and I love the alternate settings that he has because I think it is a great system. But you're right, as far as using that as a means to give advice, it's not the greatest. But at the same time, I love that it forces us to dig into the corners a little bit more and find some more viable players. And also value the quarterback position. Probably my biggest
Yeah.
pet peeve in fantasy football is one quarterback. I understand you only play with one on the field at a time in life, but it's also the most important position in the game, and it vastly diminishes the value of them there. So I'm so happy to play in super flex leagues.
Yeah, it's why I've really enjoyed Scott's scoring this year. And I actually don't think that Scott is totally happy with it, because there have been a number of weeks where, like, if Patrick Mahomes throws multiple interceptions, all of a sudden, perhaps in an otherwise good game, he ends up with a terrible number. So I'm not sure that Fish is even totally thrilled with his scoring settings this year, but for me, it was the Blake Bortles season, right? It was a year
Right.
in which we had a quarterback literally lead the league in time sacked, interceptions, and fumbles, and he was like the QB4, right? Like we've got things to fix when when
Yeah.
that's our scoring.
Well, Jameis Winston, 30 for 30. I mean, that's another perfect
Yes.
example of that. 30 interceptions, just mind blowing. Just mind blowing to think about how bad you have to be to throw that many interceptions. But and yet he was considered a safer option for the Saints this year before he got hurt. That's
Yep.
just one of life's rich ironies there. So yeah, the Saints providing a bunch of news for us. The Jets earlier provided news for us here too. Unfortunately, Elijah Moore's picked up an injury, and he's been on such a nice roll for us.
Yeah, I don't have like positive spin here. I don't have
No,
a Jet that you should go out and grab.
no, no.
It's not a normal team, right? Like, okay, what does this mean for Jamison Crowder? His probably his standard 6-catch, 42-yard game, right? I'm not unusually enthusiastic about any of the lesser Jets. It's just one of those situations where if they don't have their bona fide stars, it's just that much more miserable. I'm not encouraged about it. We might not get Tevin Coleman this week.
Right.
I didn't have big plans for Tevin Coleman anyway. Ty Johnson seems like a fine start against a generic defense, but he's not getting a generic defense. He's getting the Saints. So he's getting one of the stingiest run defenses out there. So there's just not a lot to like here. It's good.
No.
So it's good news for the Saints defense. I'm starting them in a bunch of places. I would encourage other people to start them in a bunch of places. There's just nowhere to go with the ball.
Yeah, steady heaping of Zach Wilson to Keelan Cole, and who doesn't want more of that? But it's funny. They start, maybe finally this gets Denzel Mims on the field, but maybe unlikely. I don't know, but I still have this like little soft spot thinking that Mims is going to be something someday, but I feel like he never got a fair shake. But I don't know, when you can't crack that, it's hard to say. But that's a big one. The Niners are another situation where there's just all sorts of chaos going on. Is Debo going to play? Is he not? They say he's going to maybe practice later this week. They hope to have him, but he didn't practice today. Elijah Mitchell's in the concussion protocol, and he's bothered by a knee now all of a sudden. And this is a pretty good matchup against the Bengals, who are going to be missing Logan Wilson.
Yeah, man, Debo's got to play, right? Because this could be like we've been joking on Twitter. At least I've been joking on Twitter a little bit about the notion of Debo Samuel actually picking up running back eligibility. But this could be the week that cements it, right?
Right.
Because it doesn't look. Who did they sign today? They elevated Brian Hill, maybe.
Yep.
Right. Like
he's everybody's threat. It's like, okay, if you don't heal, we're going to play Brian Hill. If you don't take care.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's a sign when they do that on a Wednesday, a Thursday. That is definitely a sign that they are not optimistic about Elijah Mitchell, because as you say, he's got the concussion and then he picks up a midweek injury. It's not good. But there's a path here for Debo to come back and get 15, 16 carries. And if he gets a significant number of carries and they aren't just like jet sweep type carries, I don't know. Do the Niners list him differently? Does Yahoo have to do something with him? That seems crazy on the brink of the fantasy playoffs, but he may actually function as a running back this week. If it's not him, it's like JaMychal Hasty in the backfield, because Jeff Wilson also had his knee flare up last week. So he's no lock. You got to add these guys, right? Like you probably got to take a flyer on Hasty if it appears that he's going to be the only functional running back for them. He'd be interesting, but this to me is all about like what Debo is actually able to do.
Yeah, I want to be quick about Hasty, but yeah, we could see that there. Or I could preach on and on about Trey Sermon being on the IR, but we don't want that either.
These are the most Jeff Erickson jokes of all time.
I know they are, right? And they just present themselves there. All the kids love them. I know. I'm told that, at least very popular with the younger crowd.
Somewhere your daughters are like rolling their eyes and they don't even know.
Oh yeah, they're at high school now. It's crazy. I have 2 high school girls. You've got a college girl. We're old, dude. We're old, but it's awesome at the same time. I love seeing that. Every stage of development so far has been awesome with them, including their embrace of the dad jokes. At least my younger one, Aaron, appreciates my dad jokes.
My daughter's playing fantasy now. Like my daughter, like we have some of the communication that I appreciate the most is like a Monday morning when she hits me up for potential ads in her 18-team league. It's phenomenal,
dude. That's awesome. That's awesome. And there you go. And she's actually thinking about ads sooner than anybody playing on Yahoo, where you have to do those Tuesday night pickups there. But Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Is this a college league or friends from high
It's
school?
a
What is it?
it's a college it's a college league. It's like her it's her teammates on the cross country team, and I thought it was just, it's like the first fantasy league she's played in, and it's just like a bunch of college kids. So I was like, well, this is probably an 8-team league or a 10-team league or something like that. And she had the draft and wanted me like available online while she was drafting. And I had a competing draft going on that I was like, 16-team league. I got to focus on this thing. So okay, but I'll
Mhm.
answer your questions. And then it turned out it was like the most complex 18-team league that would be at least the second most complex thing that I was in. And this is like how she's getting her feet wet in fantasy. Anyway, her
That's
team,
awesome.
like, all teams look terrible in an 18-team
Oh, of
league, right?
course. Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, I'm in a 16 teamer and well, it is terrible, but it looks even worse than normal. I mean, it's one of my two really horrifically bad teams. I guess I got some injuries. Like before the season started, that was a Gus Edwards team. After
Uh,
it was after the first injury there, after Dobbins' injury, I thought, okay, I'll get Gus Edwards in the fourth round or something like that. And a 16 teamer when it's a long way home before you get your next pick. Yeah, that didn't work out so well, but
yeah, we
that's okay.
actually aced her draft, but then Derrick Henry got hurt. So it's
Oh,
we're just trying to stagger into the playoffs here.
okay. Well, just get hot at the right time. There you go. Well, look at Tennessee's running back situation there. Do you like Hilliard this week?
One of the tricks to that running back situation is that I think Jeremy McNichols is going to come back, and that's kind of a problem for everyone
Yeah,
because Hilliard basically stepped into his touches a few weeks ago and then
right.
performed so well that Vrabel was like, "Oh, we got to get him more touches." But I think all three are going to play, and we probably need this thing to be down to two guys, right? Because neither like nobody here is great. Obviously, nobody here is Derrick Henry. Deontay Foreman gets tackled by the first guy who makes contact with him every time. So like I think he's fine as a guy who might get a dozen carries, and if he breaks, great. But there's nobody here that I'm really secure in. It's not even a bad matchup or anything, right? Like I should be somewhat enthusiastic about this, but I liked it a whole lot better when I thought it might be two players. But a three-man committee is a bit much.
Yeah, it's funny. We had your colleague Scott Pianowski on the SiriusXM show today, and he said the same thing. You wanted to get it to two. We were talking about Buffalo, but
Yeah.
same thing applies. You look at that. We've been looking. We'll talk a little bit more on ranks in a bit, but the running back situation. There's Seattle, there's Buffalo, there's Tennessee, and all these 3-man units. And you can't just, and the thing is, these are the guys that are available. If you have Jonathan Taylor this week, you got to pick among one of these guys. You got to like hope and pray that Rashad Penny is going to be worth something with a good matchup against Houston, or you hope that Hilliard has another. They build off of what he did. Even, he played well against the Pats, but for that one fumble.
Right, right. Had a long scoring play. Fun player, fun story. Right,
Right,
very much out of nowhere. He's probably the guy that I like the most. Although
right.
I feel like McNichols could just really surprise us at the end of this thing and end up out snapping everyone else. And if anybody's going to get 80 yards, maybe it's him.
Hmm. That would gum up the works because I guarantee you that your league's not handicapping it that way either. They're probably
Right,
handicapping it
right.
Hilliard first. We'll keep on talking about more news and notes and Week 14 ranks, but first, quick note from Andy's company, Yahoo. The NFL season is heating up, and Yahoo is going big on daily fantasy football this season. There will be a ton of big prize contests. Harley's really excited about that too. You can tell.
Super excited about it. Yeah.
Yes, there will be a ton of big prize contests throughout the year on Yahoo, including their multi-entry contest now being shark-free. No Andy Behrens in your pool. Lucky you. To celebrate, Yahoo is going big on DFS as well as Yahoo Daily Fantasy becoming shark-free. Yahoo is giving all users the opportunity to claim free $10 in site credit. Users can take advantage of this free $10 site credit offer to join any paid contest, including Yahoo's biggest contest, the weekly $1 million DFS NFL Baller Contest. The weekly $1 million contest features $1 million in total prizes, including first place receiving $100,000 and tons of overlay and prizes. Play daily fantasy football on Yahoo this season. Visit sports.yahoo.com/dailyfantasy/welcome to claim the free $10 offer to get started. I'm here with Andy Behrens from Yahoo. You can hear Andy on the Yahoo forecast. Tell us, everybody. Tell us when you can hear you guys on that, when it airs, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, 5 days a week. The Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast. It's a podcast and a forecast. Can't beat that. You get two
Right.
casts for the low price of no money. Right. So it's really fun. We record it on Monday. Hits your ears on Tuesday. I do a pickups podcast with Pianowski each week. But there's two of us on each show. Different little theme for every day of the week, and we have a good time with it.
Yeah. And you got a stacked roster there at Yahoo. So many good analysts and friends of ours.
And also Dalton.
Come on, it's only Liz that's supposed to pick on Dalton. I already hear enough of that. Have you been caught up though in the whole the Team of Destiny stuff with them?
I didn't like. I was only taking it so seriously until the last couple of weeks, and now it's a real thing that may happen.
Right.
Now Dalton may end up like on a yacht. God knows what Liz would do with like he shouldn't be allowed access to that kind of fortune.
He's already, he might move to a foreign country or so. Oh, wait, never mind.
He might go to space. Like, I feel like Chris Liss might be the first fantasy analyst to actually send himself to space.
Yeah.
He might blow the whole thing on that. Intergalactic
edition of Rotowire Fantasy Sports today. And we can make it happen there. All right. Let's talk a little Lions, because why not? TJ Hawkinson's dealing with a hand issue. DeAndre Swift didn't practice today. And, it's an AC joint sprain for Swift. I don't count on him playing this week, but the Hawkinson thing kind of came up with something new.
Yeah, we shouldn't panic on Wednesdays, right? Like it's a great sign if your guy goes on a Wednesday, and it doesn't mean much of anything if your guy doesn't go on a Wednesday. We all know that Friday is the practice day that everybody should focus in on. I'm uptight about it because, as you can imagine, my fantasy portfolio is full of Iowa tight ends. It's basically Kittle and Hawkinson all over the map. So, so I need him to go. He was awfully busy this past weekend. He's been. I don't even know if I should, in a season in which Kyle Pitts hasn't even approached expectations. I don't know if I should consider TJ Hawkinson a hit or a miss or just sort of a solid, I don't know, single. He's been fine most of the year. He's been about as good as anyone could possibly be given the offensive context in Detroit. So I'm certainly hoping he goes. It's another situation where there's nobody that steps up and you're like, oh man, I've been waiting for the opportunity to start in Detroit if 8 targets become available. So it's not particularly actionable. We just need to really, really hope that Hawk can play.
Yeah, we've only recently gotten some more activity from St. Brown, and they added Josh Reynolds. Those appear to be the 2 top wideouts now, which speaks volumes, but also at least we have some definition.
That felt like a signature game for St. Brown, and I wasn't I wasn't even somebody who was super in on him coming into the season, but he caught almost everything that came his way, held on to the game-winning catch, right? Like tough yards, tough catches, really impressive performance. So that felt like, and it was also a significant target total, and the kind that we probably just need to react to, right? Somebody sees double-digit targets, you probably got to, if you're in a deep league, you probably got to add that. So it really felt like a signature, finally really hit the fantasy stage.
When I was doing my ranks for this week with him, I was like, okay, I want to see it again. But then started looking at the other receivers. I'm like, okay, he's in my top 50. Okay, fine. He's there. Like, I can't put Tim Patrick over him as much as I like Tim Patrick because he's getting like 3 targets a game. Yeah,
I really feel. I don't know that I felt this way in a long time, but I feel this way at running back too. At a certain point, it just receiver just goes off a cliff.
Yeah,
like you're really happy doing ranks, and then boom, Marvin Jones shows up, and it's all downhill from there, right? Like it's terrible thereafter.
It's sooner than that. It's like after 20. Like what do you do with DK Metcalf? I mean, DK Metcalf is a great player.
You're right.
But you can't count on him every week, and it's no failings of him. It's just Russell's just not the same. What do you do with Jarvis Landry? Okay, he's 25. He's going to get plenty of something, but is that worth anything? I just, Brandon Cooks is getting Davis Mills targets. Yay. What do I do with that?
Exactly. The Seattle thing is such a problem. The Seattle thing is because they don't do anything creative with Metcalf, right? They're not just, they don't really manufacture touches for him. We're not running a few wide receiver screens just to get him involved, right? They still send him on go routes all the time, and it's a lot of the same boring stuff that defenses can react to. It's maddening. And then Russell, for all the problems that we have with Russell Wilson, I feel like the biggest is that he is just simply not running anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we almost need to think of it like, I think he's out of the dual threat quarterback club, right? Like, I mean, he's just averaging like 3 carries for 15 yards a game. I don't think he has a game with even 35 rushing yards this year. And
Right.
like, I don't know, here we are. It's week 14. Like, if it hasn't happened now, it's not going to happen.
He and Dak are both way down on running. And with Dak, you understand he's coming back from a destroyed ankle, and Dak was mobile, but he wasn't a runner. He's not like Kyler Murray. He's not like Lamar. He's not like Taysom Hill.
He was like inside the 5 mobile, right?
Yeah.
Like he would take carries at the goal line and he'd score 5 or 6 touchdowns a year, but
Right.
you weren't counting on 50 or 60 rushing yards from him. But that was always, the appeal of Russell is even in an off day, he might run for 45, 55
Right.
yards.
Going back to the receivers, when we were talking about St. Brown, here's a question that's actually in this neighborhood here. Need a flex, and his options suck. He's looking at St. Brown, Reynolds, Penny, or Beasley. This is that neighborhood we're in. What do you think about that grouping?
Yeah, that's probably St. Brown or Beasley for me. Was it full PPR? Maybe I shouldn't even care. Like maybe for PPR league.
Your favorite?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I love a league where a 10-yard run is valued the same as a catch for no gain. Love it. I mean, that's perfect. That is exactly how the game exists in real life. Yeah, I don't want to overreact to the game that St. Brown just had, and I do feel like he was somebody that we need to pay attention to, and we need to consider adding. But obviously, the upside for Buffalo's offense in any given week when they're not playing in a wind tunnel, right, is significantly higher. And I feel like Beasley is where I would go there.
Yeah. I'm kind of slightly low-key intrigued about Penny, depending on what happens with the rest of that backfield. But that's the problem, is what happens with the rest of the backfield. But
that got a little bit messier with it got a little bit messier with Alex Collins coming back. Not that we should worry about, not that Alex Collins, I mean, on his best day is like 10 carries and 40 yards. But I mean, if that's we talked earlier about Tennessee potentially being a 3-man backfield and how that puts it kind of in the dumpster for me. But Seattle as a 4-man backfield, which is where we might be. That's just, I don't know. Is Penny getting goal line carries? Is Adrian Peterson getting goal line carries? Do we care? Are they going to get to the goal line? That gets really messy, and it's the worst run defense in the league too.
One of my favorite things last week was everyone dunking on Ian Rappaport for calling the Adrian Peterson signing a win now signing.
Yes.
That cracked me up. They did win, by the way. They won. But 11 for 16. It's just hard to get more washed than that.
Yeah, that is like the Matt Asiata line, right? Like that's it's a short list of players who produced lines like that continually and remained in the league.
Yeah, it's sub Eddie George level now at the latter days of Eddie George, and that was sad too. Let's quick another note here real quick before we move on. If there's one thing we appreciate here at Rotowire, it's making good decisions, and even more so, making the right decision. Listen up, folks. I have an incredible offer for you with Rotowire's newest partner, WynnBET, the premier digital casino and sportsbook app. WynnBET is now the exclusive gaming sponsor for Rotowire's fantasy podcast. WynnBET brings you all the latest action with a user-friendly interface, moneyline bets, boosted parlays, over-unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more at your fingertips. Want a break from sports betting? Head into WynnBET's digital casino and take a spin on roulette, double down in blackjack, slam the slots, or try your hand at baccarat. WynnBET is currently available in 7 states: Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, and Virginia, while rapidly expanding. At WynnBET, the possibilities are limitless. WynnBET is currently offering all Rotowire listeners a risk-free bet up to $500 on your first wager. Download WynnBET now. That's WYNNBET. WynnBET, the exclusive partner for Rotowire's fantasy podcast. I want to thank WynnBET. They've been sponsoring us all fall season. We appreciate that there. I'm here with Andy Behrens. You can catch Andy on Twitter. You can catch him on Yahoo. You can catch him on the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast. Great stuff, 5 days a week. So look, happy to have that. Andy also does a lot of stuff with the FSWA. He's been running the Hall of Fame program there. It's been fun to see that because your colleague and our good friend Scott Pianowski is getting in this year. Scott's long deserving. He's been doing this as long as anyone. He's a multi-sport writer. I should be talking to him about it, but I'm talking to you about it because we're both good friends with Scott as well.
Yeah, I was super happy for Scott. By the way, I'm not like part of the discussions when Scott gets
right. Of course,
when Scott was voted on. That's not I'm separated from that. But,
right. And I want to make clear, I wasn't implying you weren't pulling the levers there, but at the same time, I more want to highlight the amount of work that you do to highlight good work in our community.
I was just thinking about this. Like, I feel like Scott and you and I are like of that prior generation of fantasy analysts when you were sort of expected to cover multiple sports, right? I'm kind of jealous of all the specialists, the people who get to dive into football year round, right? Or they're on baseball year round, and we're just bouncing back and forth, whatever's in season. But Scott like takes it to a different level because Scott is on hockey. Scott will do golf. Scott will do
hoops.
Scott will do things that yes, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, Scott and I played in the same hockey league for over 20 years. We played in the same golf league for over 20 years. It's crazy. And he's great at every single one of them too. He's the defending champ.
That's a good point. Like, Scott's a good player, and there are people who invest so much of themselves in the analysis part of this that they like their leagues become a bit of an afterthought. Scott is an absolute shark. Scott is almost always the best player in any group.
You said you're in 26 leagues. Was that a hyperbole, or was that your actual count this year?
No, that's my actual league count. Those are my like season long. Yeah,
those are all managed leagues, not any best balls in there, right?
No. That's not the best ball portfolio, which I've long since forgotten about.
Right.
Those are just the ones that I have to like dive into each week, and it's not problematic until because I do this all day, so it's not that big a deal. It's just football, right? It's not like managing 26 hoops or baseball rosters where you just got to be on it daily, right? And you have to prioritize them in weird ways. It's manageable, except when a fringe player is probably going to be out, and you have to think of like the 3 leagues in which you own that fringe player. that's where I stumble. It's the Mark Ingrams of the world getting ruled out that really hit me.
Right, because like I do a spreadsheet during draft season, where it's just a Google Doc where I list all my players by position and all that. But then after 2 months of transactions, that's moot. I can't.
Yeah.
It's like there are times I go to pick up a player and he's already on my roster. That's happened multiple times. We're in a auto new league together there, and I know I've done it there a couple of times. Like, where is he? Oh, there he is. He's on my roster already. Okay, fine. But how do you manage your teams? What's your method?
You can't hope to remember those rosters too, right? Because that's like 40 guys. Super fun league. A great group of managers, but you can't hope to remember everybody you've got there.
Right. How do you what's your process? Do you have a process where you try to maintain who's on what rosters? How do you do this?
Well, at some point they prioritize themselves, right? Like that, I will say there's like 5 or 6 leagues that I jump to initially. Like, if there's breaking news, if there's something actionable that's happening right now, I've got like my sort of core group of 5 or 6 leagues that I know I have to hit, and where I know people will actually be available. A fair number of these things are dynasty leagues where there's just no one available at any time, right? So it doesn't. Nothing is ever actionable until we're drafting rookies, right? So the rest of them, they weed themselves out. You have 3 or 4 where you just have no luck at all, and I'm still setting lineups, but hey, you like I'm 5 and 8 or whatever, I'm not prioritizing those things. But the rest of them, yeah.
And you're right. Nothing sadder than a dynasty league free agent period there, where you're just like, oh, I need somebody this week. Oh no. Oh man, it's just it's great.
I have a couple of leagues where like 3 times this year, Adrian Peterson has been the name that bubbles up to the top of the.
I saw someone spend $450 of their fab on him in my dynasty league, and then drop him 2 weeks later. It's like,
oh man.
Yeah. But what else are you going to spend it on? That's just the point. And there are $0 bids. So anyways, looks like we got some breaking news actually. And thanks to J-Red for this. I'm going to confirm but verify. We already had Keenan Allen on the COVID IR. Mike Williams is also on the COVID IR for the Chargers.
Oh no.
Brutal. Chris Harris too for the Chargers. So that is bad. So I already have picked up Jalen Guyton in a couple of places. Man, what do you do? I mean, because there is a qualitative difference. You can't just slot in the next guy.
Yeah, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen both. Those aren't roles, right? Like those are
Right.
it's not like just like, oh, the Keenan Allen role. Someone will just scoop that up. The Mike Williams role, the guy who's open even when he's not open.
Right.
That's not like a system generated role or anything like that someone can step into. It's got like, and we might not be done here, right? I mean, it's a COVID breakout, so we still have to wait to see if it hits Guyton or Josh Palmer, right? But those are the next two men up, and it just looks better and better all the time. I suppose for Austin Eckler, who was probably already the RB1 coming into the week, assuming
Yep.
assuming he's healthy and good to go, and is certainly the RB1 if there's no Allen or Williams.
100% agree. And you might start seeing like Parham and Cook be used a little bit more
Yep.
frequently too.
Yeah.
Just because Josh Palmer fills the off his hands into an interception role, but that's it's an obscure but important one.
It's impactful.
Yeah. But yeah, you're going to start digging in a little bit more and more. So I don't know. It's going to be pretty tricky to see that there. And meanwhile, the Giants, they might be having Glennon out there. It sounds like he might clear concussion protocol in time. Otherwise, we see Jake from State Farm. I mean, I want to see Jake Fromm, to be honest. We know what Mike Glennon looks like out there. I'd like to see something different.
Yeah, I mean, you're either getting Jake Fromm or you're getting Mike Glennon with a head injury. So the Chargers D seems like the streaming defense for me this week. I think they're a better. Like I'm not deterred if Mike Glennon comes back. I'm not like,
Same.
oh man,
Same.
I can't believe I added the Chargers for this, and now I have to face Mike Glennon. There's nothing to worry about there.
I actually ranked the Chargers as my number one defense this week going in,
Yeah.
but taking away Chris Harris might change that a little bit. I don't know, but especially because there's so many good options this week. Tennessee against Jacksonville, Broncos against Detroit. Although Detroit looked like a NFL offense, but that might be the Vikings making them look that way. But even the Chiefs against the Raiders, I like again this week too.
One thing I thought was, listen, I understand it's always difficult to carry two defenses, anything like that, but one of the most added fantasy assets in Yahoo's game over these past couple days has actually been the Green Bay defense,
Yep.
which is like a legit, real life good defense that scores for us in fantasy and is actually good at, like, this isn't some hey, they're good for a week as a stream because you're playing the Lions or whatever. Like, this is a legit good defense that is actually now getting some of its best players back. They were down to like 30% rostered, and of course everybody's scooped them up over the last few days. But like, keep an eye on the wire this is the last of the bye weeks. There's 4 teams on bye. Like the Patriots were one of the most dropped, and not a ton. I think they're still like 80 some percent rostered. But thousands of leagues, like the Patriots are hitting the wire. Ramondre Stevenson is hitting the wire. Useful fantasy commodities are hitting the wire in a week when it's like you lose and you're done, right? Like, there's
Yep.
high stakes in this thing, and anybody on a bye week can't help you. So I understand why some of these drops are being made.
Right.
But if you're sitting there at 9 wins and you're already in the playoffs, like, you should take advantage of this.
Yeah, and if you're scrambling for the teams could be scrambling for the playoffs this week, not want to use the Rams against Arizona, they might cut them to
Hmm.
pick up the Packers. So pay attention to see if the Rams happen to be available
Yep.
next week too. I might be speaking from experience here in one case here, where I am scrambling to try to make the playoffs, and I didn't want to start the Rams this week. So, there's options. The Jair Alexander could come back this week too, which is pretty big. Yeah, the counterpoint is you're not going to have Andy Dalton throwing left-handed passes anymore. So it's going to be Justin Fields. So I know that you're a big fan of Chicago quarterbacks, and also I know if this is too soon, I apologize, but I actually thought that Fields was showing some signs. That Pittsburgh game on Monday night he was really good. The Niners game, he looked really good. I think there's some reason for optimism with Justin Fields, at least.
Yeah, I thought he just had some wonderful moments and some of the best throws of the week in the Pittsburgh game. Like, he's had enough moments that I can carry this into the offseason and feel pretty good about where the Bears are quarterback wise going into next year. I'm glad that he is going to be healthy enough to finish the season. Because he's a perfect example. And listen, I don't know what's going on in San Francisco. I don't know why Trey Lance hasn't played basically at all. But he is a really good example of why, like, live action in real games, when you're facing defenses that are trying to disguise things and are actually scheming to you, why this matters. And yeah, like, the Cleveland game was horrible, but he's clearly taken things away from it. The Pittsburgh game was phenomenal, and he made 3 or 4 just spectacular throws in that thing. And so, this will be another step for him. It's great to get more experience against Green Bay. It is obviously it's a challenging defense, but he needs to play. And one of the other things that we saw from Fields, and I'm not recommending him as you're in the playoffs in fantasy, you should start Justin Fields. I'm not saying that, but they did have a few actual designed run options for him in his most recent games, which is going to be a key to his fantasy value, right? You have to you think of that 4th down touchdown that he had a few weeks ago. That was just probably the best thing that I've seen a Bears quarterback do in my lifetime, right? He's got some special traits for sure, and he's just got to get reps.
So we're having this discussion. It's tough to play quarterback in Chicago. There isn't really this long history of great Bears quarterbacks. There's some pretty good ones, some ones that have been there at the helm with great teams. Is it the weather, especially where the stadium's located off the lake? Maybe that has something to do with it. Is it the organization, the fact that it's been the Hallis/McCaskey family for such a long time? What makes it about Chicago that they can't get a decent quarterback?
Yeah, we're not talking about ownership that is necessarily on the cutting edge of
No.
of
No.
NFL offense and scheme and whatnot. And they've been super loyal to some executives. It's frustrating. They also when they landed, whatever you think of Jay Cutler, huge talent, right? Huge arm. And it's crazy that Jay Cutler never had a 4,000-yard season in Chicago. A little bit of it was, just bad luck with injuries. But you can have a bad season and finish with 4,200 passing yards. That happens all the time. There'll be 10 guys that do it this year, right? It just happens all the time. They surrounded him with kick returners. They brought Jay, old grievance of mine, whatever. I'm an ancient human, but they brought him to Chicago, paid him, and then gave him Devin Hester and Johnny Knox. And what the hell's he gonna do?
They did have Brandon Marshall, though. I mean,
obviously they later gave him Brandon Marshall. If you put that one season together with McNown and Cutler, you can get to 4,000 yards, right? They had a decent quarterbacking and receiving season under Trestman. But it's maddening. The team record for passing yards in a season is held by Eric Kramer. It's 3,838 yards. I think I should get a tattoo of it. It's crazy. The franchise is 1,000 years old, and the single season passing record is 3,800 yards. That's unbelievable.
It's funny. We did so last year during the sports shutdown section of COVID. We had to, scramble for some content. And one of the things we would do is an all-time draft. We do a draft. One year, it's the all-time Bears franchise quarterback. We did it with Jeff Mans too. He's a big Bears fan. And so it's List, myself, and Mans, and trying to come up with 3 quarterbacks to make this team. I mean, he just took McMahon out of just sentimental belief. There was Cutler, it was McMahon, and then you have to go old
Sid Luckman.
Sid
Luckman, he was legitimately have to go Sid Luckman. Yeah.
It was wild, but Cleveland's in a similar boat, really. They're also on the east part of a lake. I don't know. Maybe there's something to that. I don't know. But with all the lake effect winds and snow, that's what made me think of that. Because Green Bay is just as cold. Hasn't had that problem. But they also they're situated west of the lake. Well, geography.
Yeah, no, they've been hogging all the quarterbacks my entire life, except when I was really little and they got stuck with Lynn Dickey. But other than that,
Lynn Dickey would be the Bears' second best quarterback, by the way.
Yeah, he would. You're right.
It's probably number 5. I don't know, but it's wild. Hey, one more quick note before we continue learning more about Andy. Thrive is back for another season of fantasy football, and they're running huge guaranteed contests each week this NFL season. With Thrive Fantasy, you can eliminate the countless hours of research and focus on only the top-tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. Sign up today and get a free 6-month Rotowire subscription. Here's how you can claim your free Rotowire subscription. 1. Visit rotowire.com/thrive. 2. Deposit a minimum of $10 and receive a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. 3. Play in your first paid contest and receive a free 6-month Rotowire subscription. It's just that easy. Big thanks to Thrive. Big thanks to the Blue Wire Network for hosting our podcast constantly. My guest is Andy Behrens, who went to the University of Iowa. And despite that, it's a very nice guy. Actually, the perception is everyone from Iowa is a really nice guy, except when I grew up in the Big Ten, it was Hayden Fry, this ornery son of a gun that would run up the score against my school all the time. We didn't hurt your boys too bad, did we? We'll paint the locker room pink and all that. So I'm kind of like, I'm the one person that doesn't think I was all that nice and all that. But it's like, there's this perception. Iowa, Nebraska, they're so nice. I don't think so.
It's funny. Anybody who went to school like in the 80s, early 90s, in your opinion, like in the Big Ten, in your opinion of their program was shaped by either Hayden Fry or George Raveling, right? When they have
Right.
like a hyper competitive basketball team, you probably feel differently than you do now. Like Kirk Ferentz seems like everybody's grandfather, and nobody really has strong opinions about Kirk Ferentz except they don't know why he can't stop running the ball on 2nd and 10. But other than that, like nobody has like
to
a
hire
bad
another
opinion
son.
of Kirk.
He needs one more relative on his coaching staff, but yeah, whatever. That's okay. That's fine.
No, we're all full up on Ferentz's. We're past capacity.
He's got a nice capacity to add lifetime extensions on top of lifetime extensions. So there's that too. But
that was wild. There was like a 3-year period in the NFL when every time a coaching job opened up, Kirk Ferentz got 5 more years.
Yeah. But you know what? They managed to crank out the tight ends like nobody's business. It is the tight end factory. Why? How's that happen?
Some of it is just the history of success, right? So you do occasionally get players who are like legitimate buzzy recruits at the position. Tony Moyaki comes to mind. CJ Fedorowicz went there, and they were like legit recruits. But I think the biggest part of the success story, and so last year in Super Bowl week, opportunities pop up to interview certain players, and George Kittle was making the rounds. I think he had a partnership with Gatorade. He was talking to different folks, and everybody behind the scenes at Yahoo knew that if George Kittle is talking to us, I am definitely talking to him, right? So I had 10 minutes with Kittle, and I basically turned it into an Iowa marketing campaign, and we were talking about his experience at Iowa, and it was like I think it really explained why they're so uniquely good at churning out tight ends and linemen, right? It's such a if you're a Big Ten fan, you kind of know this. They're such a developmental program, right? Like Iowa's not landing 5 stars. They're not in on the same guys that Alabama's in on. They're not in on the same guys that Ohio State's in on. They get 2 stars and 3 stars, and they develop, right? And they've had such an effective strength training program for so long under Ferentz. Like Kittle showed up on campus as, they offered him, but I think he was a preferred walk-on like his first year, right? He was a 180-pound receiver who probably not quite fast enough to play receiver in the Big Ten. And basically they developed him, they added 50 pounds of muscle and developed him into an all-pro. And by the time, and that's also why, you can look back at George Kittle's career and you're like, oh my God, how did they not unlock that guy? They had George Kittle for all that time, and, he was never the leading receiver. Well, it's because they developed him for years and turned him into the pro that he is. So they've just always had, no matter who's in charge of the weight room, they've just always had a great strength and conditioning and development program.
Yeah, that's true. Although there have been some other things that happen under the strength training program farther down the road. But
it's like a big open question for the program right now. Actually, is what this is going to look like in the aftermath of all that, because he had to go, right? Like you can't keep that culture in your locker room. But he also turned a bunch of guys into NFL prospects.
It's kind of I grew up in Indiana, and I always had the whole Bobby Knight conundrum. He's a good coach, but he's an unredeeming human being. But he's a good coach. But no, he's not so much anymore. And that was a reckoning I had to deal with as well. So I feel you on that a little bit there. You kind of went through that. So how did you go from graduating from Iowa, becoming a screenwriter, and you've actually had you have a movie. Tell everybody about that for the 7 people that don't already know that.
Yeah, I at the time I had been freelancing for ESPN, so I was doing a lot of freelance sports writing, both in Chicago and a little bit of national stuff. And somebody reached out to me, just random email, And I was still at a point in my career where I was just anybody who wanted me to write anything, I was saying yes, right? Like, and
Hmm.
especially if they're going to pay me for anything, of course I was saying yes. And they were from a company that is called a book packager, which is basically someone who it's basically an outfit that works between writers and publishing houses, right? And they conceive of book ideas and they go find writers for them to execute them. So I had an email from somebody who had like basically a 2-page summary of a notion that became ultimately it became the movie Sex Drive, which
Okay.
wow, talk about a film that you could not make today, right?
Yep.
You absolutely could not make it today. But you know, they gave me a little summary of what that book would be, and I was like, sure, yes, I'll write sample chapters for that. And so I ended up writing a young adult novel off of that and wrote a couple more with that company. And they'd basically, before I'd turned in the first draft of what became that movie, they'd already sold the movie right. I didn't have anything to do with that, right? Like,
Okay.
and once they'd sold the movie rights, they were like, thank you for your time and effort. You know, I barely had any input beyond that, but it was super fun to be part of. Fun to go to a film premiere that you're, you know, tangentially involved in. So it was a cool experience.
Very cool. How'd you turn that into a fantasy sports writing career?
Well, I was already writing for ESPN at the time. At
So
the
how did
time,
you
I was
get
doing
that then
stuff.
first?
Yeah, at the
We'll go
time I was
farther
doing
back.
stuff with Page Two and Page Three. Well, I had been writing locally as you know, freelance sports writer mostly for a handful of weeklies in Chicago. The Chicago Reader. I'd been writing for New City, Chicago, and one of the editors who I actually knew from way back in the day at Iowa at New City. Man, that was a million years ago. They no longer exist.
Hmm.
He was hired by ESPN, and so I was one of his local contacts, right? And he was like, "Oh, I can bring some writers on board, and I'll throw some work to Andy." And I'm, you know, grateful to him for that because it got me, you know, it got me basically on the same page as. I mean, that Page Two back in the day was just it was wild, right? Like it was Bill
Yeah.
Simmons and it was Hunter S. Thompson, and I'd get on email chains with these guys, and that was stupid. That was really fun. So I was doing a little bit of you know, I would do local features, handful of I did something. I followed the band Journey around Wrigley Field and did on a night that they were performing the seventh inning stretch. Did a story on that. That was really fun, and the stories did reasonably well. So I was just writing sports features for them for a long time, and was actively playing fantasy already. So it was pretty natural to reach out to the fantasy side, and I did a little bit of basketball for them. I want to say that I was the is this right? I was the Montreal Expos. They used to have team correspondence on the fantasy page, right? And I think I wrote the Montreal Expos page. I think Carabel let me write the Expos page, so I did that
Nice.
during Rocky Biddle's reign of terror. So I had, you know, I was kept a foot in fantasy, and then when Brandon left for Yahoo, I started talking to him, and been there ever since.
That's amazing. You know, it's funny. Eric Karabell has opened up opportunities for lots of people. He's one of those also awesome guys. He got me on television. Listen, I did the Fantasy 350 on ESPN News. We'd be on with Brian Kinney or Michael Kim, and we'd
Oh,
be
that's
on for 10
awesome.
minutes. And they would let us kind of drive a lot of the content. Although Brian and Michael both would engage, but sometimes we were with other hosts. But in the case of Brian, like he got into it. He got into it, and obviously you see him on MLB Network, and he's way into sabermetrics, and he does a sabermetric friendly league and all that. And one of the just really nice guy though. But it was all started because Eric wanted some help, and he brought Chris and I aboard, and that was pretty cool. Now Eric opens a lot of doors for people. Basically, is what I'm
Yeah,
getting at here.
yeah, super nice guy.
Yeah. Uh, when did you start playing? What was your first league?
Oh man. Well, we tried to launch one when I was in college, but we got it all wrong. Right.
Yeah.
We spent an entire day basically drafting every NFL position and coming up with scoring for it, and the league was a nightmare to run.
Oh no.
And I thought, yeah, that was just absolutely terrible. Like it was legitimately, it was like a 12-hour draft or a 13-hour draft or something like that. Got the scoring terrible. I think it ended in controversy. But then my first the first leagues that I was really committed to and actually functioned well were early '90s, and I was working at the time at a corporate job out in the burbs. Great group of guys, really fun league. And I think the reason that I became fantasy obsessed in the first place is that I just could not conquer it. Like typical fantasy story, great teams each year. I think I made our Super Bowl like 3 straight years, lost it in heartbreaking fashion every year. I lost it the worst, and I forget if this was like 94 or 95, Monday night championship week. I have an utterly insurmountable lead. I have like a 65 point lead. He has 2 guys left, and they are like,
can I name them?
Yeah.
Billy Volek and Drew Bennett.
Oh no, it's not that year. He has Steve Young and Jerry Rice on Monday night against Minnesota. And I'm just talking smack all day. I'm gloating. I'm planning the parade.
Oh, no.
I'm literally going to have a parade around this like warehouse at this company. I'm so excited for like, I'm finally winning this damn league. And then I think I know that Rice finished with almost 300 yards, right? He had 290 yards and maybe a 10-yard run and like 3 touchdowns. And Steve Young accounted for, it was some stupid passing total that never happened then. It was 400 yards, something like that. So he finishes with like 4 touchdowns. I lose by a lot. I somehow lose by, records are set in the league that night. I lose by a ton. And if I didn't call in sick, I at least thought about it.
That's so funny. That you hear those stories all the time too. This is why we do chances to win on Monday and we talk about the airplane test. The odds of dying in an airplane accident are so infinitesimal. It's like, get on that airplane, you're fine, you're safe. But every once in a while, you think you have an airplane test worthy margin, you don't, and that was one of them there for you. But that's funny. What's your best type of sport? What's your best type of format, whether it's fantasy football, fantasy baseball? What do you think when you like, what draft do you think I'm automatically one of the favorites when we play this type of draft or this type of league?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Almost anytime I'm in a league with, and I don't know, I guess I'm in the fishbowl playoffs, so it's working out okay. Almost anytime we're in a league with quirky scoring, I'm the guy who shows up to the draft and knows it's stone cold. So the weirder the scoring system, the better I'm almost certainly going to do, and I'm certainly going to draft well, right? Like the closer we get, the closer we get to the settings that we all rank for, I'm probably on not maybe I'm a little bit better than your standard hometown league, but I'm closer to being on equal footing. But if we're in a really quirky league, you can rest assured that I know all of the settings, and it doesn't, like, that can be super flex, that can be point per first down, it could be all sorts of things. I'm going to know the settings showing up. I don't have to ask questions when we're in the draft room.
You're the guy when it comes to the poker game. Like, let's not play Hold'em. Let's play Pot Limit Omaha. Let's do
Yes, yeah.
Pot Limit Omaha 8. Yeah, we'll do that. Let's add another wrinkle here, and then we'll call. It'll be a rotating game. Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, so that's cool. I like that. How many? So is football or baseball your best sport, or is it basketball for that matter?
My best fantasy sport, real life sport. It's probably football. I'm also kind of built for the daily grind of a lot of baseball leagues, and I enjoy that. Like,
Me too.
doesn't, like, I don't hit July and I'm burned out and I can't do it anymore. But it's probably football. I enjoy like fun format where you can, I think people know this. Anybody watching this show or listening to this show knows it. Like, you just need to be right about a handful of big things in football. You don't need to. There's such different sports from baseball. Like, you need to nail you need a bunch of small edges in baseball. In football, you needed to get the Cooper Kupp versus Robert Woods question right, or you needed to get Austin Eckler right. There's like 5 things and no more each year that you need to absolutely nail, and then you need to be good on waivers. And I'm usually pretty good at both of those. I can get a couple of big things right. And in football, you can get 1,000 things wrong along the way. We all do, but if you get a couple of huge things right at the start of the season, you're usually golden.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Finally, you're actually a good athlete yourself too. You run a lot. I know you run a lot because I see you on Strava. Although you may not have seen me recently, I'm not very good right now about biking. But And then your daughter is like an awesome runner too. Is this something you guys share together? Is this something you guys did together, and then that got her love for running, or how'd that work out?
I am an active athlete. I don't know if I'm a good athlete. I do run a lot.
Mhm.
I do that. I've got a marathon coming up in April. I do enjoy distance running. It's like my podcast time, right?
Mhm.
It's actually relatively productive time for me. Ella got my daughter, by the time she was in junior high, was so good. And like there's probably a moment there when we could have run a 5K in similar times, but then she surpassed me so quickly once she got to high school. It would have been humiliating for me. It wouldn't have done anything for her, right? She would have been like, "Of course I beat this old man." So there was a
That's so
was a
funny.
very short window when we could have done it. The only times that we'll really run together are like turkey trot season. We both take the turkey trot super seriously. And so we'll do that together, and I'll try to keep
Yeah.
her in sight for as long as I can.
Nice. Very nice. That's cool. So what do you got coming up next? I know you've got the fantasy forecast, the Yahoo fantasy forecast. What else? You have a number of columns as well. What else do you got coming up?
Yeah, the biggest thing that we do, and the thing that I would encourage anybody to check out is Fantasy Football Live. It's our 90-minute pregame show on Sundays. We go over obviously all the actives, inactives. We have a bunch of spirited debates about players, any breaking news, any weather updates that we need to give you.
Right.
Really fun show, fun vibe to the show, and it's a production miracle now that we're not all in the same space, right? We have like 5 different people on the show, and we're all in different little boxes, and they do a marvelous job behind the scenes. So it's a really fun show with a good vibe. It's probably my favorite part about the football week.
Nice. That's awesome. Awesome to hear. Well, Andy, I want to thank you so much for coming on board. It was a pleasure to catch up with you. We get to see each other usually once or twice a year, and that's been a while. It's been
Yeah.
longer than that. So thank you for coming on board, and good luck in all 26 of your leagues.
Thanks, man. Great to be here.
You bet. That's going to do it today for the Rotowire Fantasy Football Podcast. We've got Mario and John tomorrow, as always. Big thanks to WinBet for their exclusive gaming sponsorship. We'll be back at you again next week. Take care.